I am so honored today to introduce to you Shauna Brittenham Ryder. I am I'm glad to introduce you to her because her article titled Rebuilding Life After Trauma was recently published in Authority magazine. She is an entrepreneur dedicated to the empowerment and healing of herself and others. She founded and led to multi-million-dollar status Alaya Naturals based on holistic health principles that led to her own healing. Even more than the physical healing has been the miracles cultivated from within. We'll hear more about those in just a minute. She wrote USA Today's national bestseller, You Are the Boss of You. I love that title.
Thank you.
Resides in Los Angeles with her husband and two children. Alana, your own physical challenges led you, or Shauna, I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name.
A rose by any other name.
Okay,
No problem.
your own physical challenges led you on this journey of healing from the
hmm
depths of time. Do you have any idea why you experienced such a devastating health crisis?
Well, I was born with something called neutropenia or leukopenia. And what that means is I have innately a white blood cell deficiency that makes it harder to combat whatever viruses I'm exposed to. So my whole life has sort of been a series of lessons based on whatever has been presented to me in the moment. And it's taken many forms and it's impacted many parts of my body. And I keep learning new lessons based on what's being presented to me. But fundamentally, there's what one might call sort of like a weakness or a vulnerability innately existing in my body based on the fact that I just don't fight, external threats the way most people do. So I will say that's part one. And
Okay.
part two is most likely my disposition, which is that I tend to be a people pleaser.
Okay.
I can be hyper vigilant and anxious by nature because I'm very conscientious, I'm very detail oriented, and I'm very concerned about the feelings and experiences of the people around me. So I would say, sort of the second element of why maybe my body has taken a hit so many times over the course of my life is how I'm processing emotions or how I'm not processing emotions at any given point in time. And so, sort of understanding that whatever challenges we face physically may or may not be, but in my case, and many times, is connected to this more sort of emotional side of what's going on. Whether it's, underlying trauma that hasn't been processed or emotions that aren't being metabolized in a conscious manner, our lack of boundaries. I mean, there's so many ways in which, right, like we sort of ignore our bodies and then thrust ourselves into cycles of being unwell because we haven't really addressed what's going on inside.
And we're learning more and more, aren't we, about how our emotions impact our physical health? We're all pieces are connected. We can't separate emotional from physical.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the mind body soul connection is undeniable at this point. There's so much science that backs that. And that, as uncomfortable as it can be at times, going inward and starting to really, with compassion and without judgment, become aware of the things that are holding you back from thriving on an emotional and mental level naturally creates resilience around our health. So that's not to say we'll never be unwell physically, but when we face circumstances that are out of our control, we have the mental capacity to ride the storm with grace, with perspective, with understanding that even though we're vulnerable beings who are susceptible to all manner of pain, we might not necessarily have to suffer to the same degree, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. So, at one point in time, you were hit with a version of tinnitus. Was that the correct term for it?
Yes, yes. And that has been more recent. That was about 8 months ago now.
Mm.
I was exposed to a virus. A friend came over and had a virus and left unwell. And I got it within a couple of days. And according to the neurologist, most likely the explanation for the tinnitus is that the viral load concentrated in the fluid in my inner ear and damaged my hearing.
Wow.
So of course, I was very anxious, not only because I'm a singer and a songwriter, and that's sort of my soul, right? Is, like music and wanting to have this pristine hearing. But also it was completely out of my control and happening to me. And when something feels that invasive and you don't know how to fix it and solve the problem, that feeling of helplessness can create a lot of suffering. And I mean, that's true for everything in life, right? Like if we feel like we were fired from our job or someone broke up with us, not having agency in situations where we feel like something's happening to us and there isn't necessarily a quick fix or a cure, so to speak, that's obvious. And the resolution takes time and is layered, and there's a process involved. And often that process is elusive. That can create a lot of strain on the body and on our physical body, but also in our emotional body. And for me, the tinnitus was a kind of, a reminder of how vulnerable we are and
Mhm.
also how powerful we are in terms of our adaptivity and our ability to respond to stress that feels insanely and wildly outside of out of our control in ways that are actually growth producing and productive in the long run. I think the word productive is kind of overused and a little bit, outdated, but I think that our evolution only benefits from positive stress if we frame it that way, right? If we can create a scenario in which we're viewing what feels like negative stress as positive stress and understand the lessons there and move forward in a way in which we control our narrative, we're then eliminating the helplessness piece and taking back our power, at least mentally. Like physically, I'm still, I've improved so much. I mean, it's been exponential progress over the past many months, but I'm still not there at the finish line. And yet, I'm choosing every day to tell myself the story that is going to continue, the progress that is heading me in the right direction, in the direction of feeling completely free, whether it's physical freedom or emotional freedom. Those two, we tend to think about those two being inextricably bound. What I'm realizing in this scenario is that they may not be.
I
I
see.
may I may or may not ever get my hearing back in my left ear fully. I may or may not ever have tinnitus indefinitely. I'd like to think that I won't, and I personally do believe that it will heal.
Yes.
But I also am taking charge now of my story and telling myself that my life will not be impacted in a way that is damaging long term, in a way that inhibits me from living out my potential, manifesting my dreams, having abundant relationships, sleeping soundly, feeling alive and empowered and joyful. Like all of those things are mine to experience and to claim in this lifetime. And I'm no longer feeling that initial sense of helplessness I did.
It's such a different take on the challenges that you're experiencing than many people perceive when they're ill and their body feels like it's out of their control. I'm hearing that you're not judging your body or judging yourself. So there's a great deal of compassion going on, self-compassion. Am I describing that accurately?
Yes, although I will say with the caveat, Nancy, that that isn't always the case. And so, I mean, I've had moments where I've literally thought, I've been the healthiest I've been in my entire life for the past 15, 20 years. And
Mhm.
this coming out of the blue really caught me off guard. And
Yes.
so I've had moments where I've said to my husband, I'm broken. Like my hearing is broken, some part of me. And and then I will reframe that thought Like there is a disconnect somewhere in my body. There's an imbalance. And there
Mhm.
was a vulnerability that allowed whatever virus this was to penetrate. And that vulnerability I'm quite aware of, which is that I wasn't taking time for myself when this happened. I got nailed by a series of demands. I was exposed back to back to multiple viruses from my children at camp to friends to family members traveling internationally and bringing things into my home. Like there was a really rough month where my body got worn down. And then I decided to throw a huge 4th of July party because I had planned on that, and 100 people were expecting me to host. I'm a party thrower. I love a good party. And instead of like canceling and taking care of myself, I threw the party, and then immediately after it was like bam, things broke. And that tends to be my cycle. But the story I'm telling myself when I go to that place of I'm broken, I'm damaged, I did this to myself, I made a choice that led to X, Y, or Z. Had I not done X, Y, or Z, I would be in a better position. Or had I followed my intuition about saying yes to this or no to that, or not letting that person come over when they were unwell. And so we go through these very damaging cycles of punishing ourselves and torturing ourselves. And it's self-sabotage that makes us feel temporarily in control because we have someone to blame. There's a source. There's an origin to our pain that we can ascribe, blame to this person or to this decision. And that person is always myself. And then we feel this temporary relief. But in the long run, it's so counterproductive to healing because we can't heal in a state of stress or anxiety. And we certainly can't heal in a place of judgment or self-blame. So when those thoughts occur, which they do from time to time, or if a thought like, God, this might be the rest of my life, I might always feel this way, I just decide to think what I want to think.
Yeah.
So it's like if I'm choosing to think I'm never going to heal or I did this to myself, those things aren't true. Those things can't be proven in the court of law. That's my own personal barometer for truth. Like this cannot be proven in a court of law. If there were a court case about this particular topic, this is subjective. This is my opinion. No one can ascribe any empirical truth to my internal life and narrative. So why not, if we can't know whether or not it's true, just decide to have another thought, right? So in this case, I'm thinking to myself, why wouldn't I be the exception? Why wouldn't I be the person who heals? Why wouldn't I be the miracle? If I'm dedicating this much intentionality, it's possible that I could even live with this for the rest of my life and end up stronger and more resilient because of how my brain adapts with neuroplasticity and all of these incredible ways our brain bends to adapt to abnormalities. Like, what if it gave me a superpower? What if my creative engine was fueled? What if my sleep becomes deeper? Like, I'm actually going to the extreme of my life could not only be like it was prior to this incident, it could potentially be better. Because why not? Why not allow myself to explore that possibility? If I'm going to create all of these damaging stories about my limitations and judge myself and feel so negatively, why not just rearrange and reframe the narrative to be ultra positive? So that's what I've been doing and giving myself a little grace, going like, even if I did make a decision that led to this, even if a person said they were unwell and they came over and I got their virus and I was like, okay, well, that's done. That's over.
I can't.
Punishing myself certainly isn't going to take me back in time. What it's going to do is empower me to make different decisions in the future so that if I have that inkling inside of me or that intuition that says, go there, don't do there, talk to that person, don't talk to that person, I'm listening now. Nancy, any part of me, any lingering remnants of people pleasing, I will say has vanished as a
Yes.
consequence of this last round of challenges.
Yeah.
And it has empowered me actually to live more truly and authentically than I was prior to this catalyst. And so, how I like to think about it is I might be avoiding something worse in the future. Right? It's very possible that I could have had a way more damaging scenario occur by not listening to my intuition had this not happened.
I,
Again, just a shift in perspective.
I believe it was Henry Ford that said, whether you think you can or you think you can, you're right. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Right.
And I personally have experienced that negative thoughts, self-judgment thoughts, literally weaken my body. I
Yes.
feel weaker when I'm thinking negative thoughts. So
Yes.
this is so inspiring to hear the choices you are making moment by moment, day by day, to believe in the best outcome for yourself and your body. In the article, you list 5 choices you made that helped. I was particularly impressed by the fourth one, and I quote you: I chose to befriend the unknown. Would you describe what that means to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a person who likes reassurance and affirmation and clarity at all times. I feel very comfortable and borderline distressed in situations where I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm a predictor. I'm someone who's always trying to anticipate the future and account for every possible case scenario. So if I go on a trip, I'm packing for 3 different potential, weather, what situations that are probably completely irrelevant to reality, right? So my doula, when I was giving birth, called me a problem solver, but there are many ways to reframe anxiety in a positive way. But essentially, I'm a person who wants to feel safe
Mhm.
on such a primal level that I go to great lengths mentally and materially, tangibly, to ensure my safety and the safety of my children and the people around me who I care about. Whether that's putting on an extra coat before it's even cold outside or eating a snack, making sure people have snacks before they're hungry. There's a lot of preemptive considerations so
Mhm.
that we're not caught in a situation where we're uncomfortable or quote unquote unsafe. I'm using examples that are sort of trivial in the grand scheme of things, right? But it's indicative of my overall mind frame. So with tinnitus, with a lot of physical ailments, with a lot of life, whether it's a romantic relationship, having children, I put my kid in the car with a babysitter, with a friend. I don't know what's going to happen. I drive a car. I don't know what's going to happen. We
Yeah.
don't know crossing the road if someone's looking down at their phone what's going to happen. We are unfortunately in a world that requires us to let go and soften our hypervigilance just so that we can survive and make day-to-day decisions. And for
Mhm.
so much of my life, the hypervigilance surrounding ordinary moments really wore me down. And I think it led to, I was never diagnosed with chronic fatigue, but I think it led to insomnia and fatigue because every minute consideration was so magnified in my mind, just trying to account for everything constantly, right? So what I am doing at this stage of my life, based on this current, tinnitus situation, is I am understanding that I don't have all of the answers and I don't have a cure, so to speak, that's a clear path
Mhm.
forward that's going to guarantee the result or outcome that I desire.
Yeah.
And I am using that instability, that fear, that anxiety regarding the unknown to strengthen my relationship with myself internally and understand that fundamentally I am adaptive, I am resilient, and I have so much power in terms of what I'm capable of in, creating my narrative, being successful, not just professionally, but in my relationships, which is the most important thing to me in the world, right? And so befriending the unknown to me means understanding that we really don't have all the answers and we really have no idea what's going to happen, but we're always in control of how we choose to perceive things that happen to us. So if we can register external influences as things that are happening for us, that's one minor mental shift that I found to be helpful and constructive. So, like, if I say to myself, this tinnitus is happening for me, right? Like my next book, I have so many tools now, having worked through this last round of challenges, that I think will help thousands of people, right? So, like, if nothing else, this is giving me an opportunity to help people heal on an even deeper level. So, again, we have this power to choose at all times the story we're telling ourselves about who we are in the world and what we're capable of, and the experience that we have access to emotionally, internally, mentally. And that's a huge part of being comfortable with the unknown.
I think we all are wonderful fiction writers. We make up
Yeah,
stories about everything, and we can make them up in our favor or we can make them up against us. It's a moment by moment choice to catch this mental reel and decide whether we're going to create a story that is in our favor or not. I really admire the work that you're doing to turn this event and challenge into a story that's in your favor.
thank you. I appreciate that.
You were recently displaced by the fires in Los Angeles. What an amazing event that just verifies that we're not in control. We like to
Absolutely.
think we're not. So, how has what you've learned through the last few months translated into how you handle a potential disaster like the burning of your home?
Yeah, I mean, we were so lucky because our home was spared. But there were about 4 days concurrently, with having our kids out of school, and we were in 6 different locations over 3 weeks, and there were 3 consecutive days concurrent with having to sort of navigate daily life with our children, where we thought for sure we were going to lose our home. Everything around us is burned, and the community that we, love and lived in for many years is gone. I will say I was incredibly prepared for this, based on what I've experienced in terms of feeling helpless over the past many months, because again, what it boils down to is our internal relationship. The relationship we have with our ability to self-soothe. What you tell yourself in your mind is going to impact you so deeply on a cellular level, physiologically, right? So if I was literally driving through flames, right, to get my children from school.
Ooh,
And and so physically I was actually unsafe. Like we were in an unsafe environment, right? There was an actual threat tangibly. But what I was telling myself was in this moment I am safe. I'm in a car
mhm,
driving to get my children. I'm alive. They're
mhm,
alive. They know I'm coming, and I am going to be taking them to safety, because that was what was true in that moment. So similar to what you said in terms of like these predictions and how we're all fiction writers, right? Like the future is all fiction. As far as I'm concerned, like in this moment, the future in reality is actually fiction. It's a story we're telling ourselves. It's imagination based, right? We have no idea what's coming in a second from now, a split second from now. So what I knew driving to get my children from school with surrounded by flames was I am safe in this moment, right? So carrying myself through something like having sounds in my ear at all times that I can't control when I lay my head down at night, and I've created these beautiful rhythms, and not just rhythms, but routines is the word I'm looking for, around sleep. And all of that sort of got thrown into turmoil with the tinnitus, right? And so what I have to do is boil everything down to the present moment at all times now, right? Which is a very fight or flight reaction. But instead of doing it from a place of fear and anxiety, which is what happens when we're in our, sympathetic nervous system, and we're all of a sudden stressed to the point where we can't think about or do anything else but what's happening in the moment, we can consciously, from a state of peace and allowance and confidence and surrender and trust, bring ourselves into presence by
mhm.
reminding ourselves that in this moment there is true safety just because we're here having this conversation, right?
Yes,
Like right now this is happening. This is what's really going on. In
yes,
15 minutes there will be a different conversation that's happening, but I will be tuning in moment by moment to that reality, not from a place of self-preservation, but from a place of awareness that in this moment in time I am safe. And if I'm not, I will then have the tools internally to talk myself through it. So, when I was getting my kids from school, I was talking to myself in my mind in a
mhm,
way that was really nourishing and soulful,
mhm.
and that brought me peace. So I was thinking to myself, I am protected. I have exactly what I need right now to get through this moment.
And you gave your children the experience of climbing in the car with a peaceful mom, not a frantic mom. I mean,
Right. And our kids are really, they're looking to us for guidance and as, the sort of revelation of what is true. So if what we're exhibiting is chaos, mental disarray, fear, of course, they'll absorb that and project that back to us.
right.
And if they're getting in the car and I'm saying, hey, kids, we're going on an adventure. I literally just Googled Palm Springs, and didn't know what hotel we were going to land at and just started heading to the desert. It was like, okay, listen, we don't know where we're going. We don't have any of our stuff, but we're going to be fine. Wherever we land, we're going to be together as a family. We're going to stop at Denny's and have a meal, and it's going to be kind of an adventure,
Uh,
right? And for them, like getting out of school early and going to stay. I mean, we also are very, very privileged. I just want to acknowledge that, like, we were in this extremely fortunate position of having the financial resources to go stay at a hotel. Most people in the world don't have that luxury when they're fleeing from crisis, be
right.
it political, social, environmental. They're fleeing with nothing. They have no money. They have no place to stay. They don't have language. There is an immediacy and a risk factor that is beyond my wildest, imagination. I cannot comprehend that the level of fear I would have if my children were piling into the car and I knew I didn't have money to pay for a hotel. Okay, so that being said, there are layers of trauma and stress, and I feel like this was relatively benign compared to what so many people in the world are going through this very moment. But still, of course, there was a level of fight or flight and like not sort of understanding what was going to happen next. And what I taught my children during this time is the message that I've been relaying to myself and hope to communicate with others, which is that we need to stay present. We need to really take inventory of what's happening, not what we think might happen, because it's not real. That's our imagination, fiction, to use your word, and to create the story that in this present moment is going to give us relief, comfort, and the ability to feel at peace and at home wherever we are. And home is very much an internal place to me now. It's not as much geographic. I mean, what I learned through this experience, and also, frankly, having parents who were divorced when I was 3 and moving around quite a bit, home is never where we are physically. I mean, I love where I live, but really, it's what we carry with us inside that becomes our home.
Not a geographical location.
It's not. I mean, listen, I'm attached to our land. We live on a beautiful mountain. We spent many, many years saving enough money to buy this particular house. We've wanted to live on this street for 12 years. We're surrounded by 2 trails that we chose this living location for. And guess what? Those trails, they're charred. Like our beach that we take our children to on Sunday mornings, it's toxic. We can't access it, right? So it does change, it makes home feel very relative in the sense that this place, this magical, wondrous place where we envisioned raising our children indefinitely is suddenly not a clean space to breathe air. Actually, after you and I wrap up this conversation, I'm going to be on the phone with administrators from schools in Boulder, Colorado. Now we're looking at, okay, where can we get our kids to fresh air, right? We need to
Yes,
keep moving forward with the information we have
yes.
and making the best decisions we can in the moment, the next right step.
Several years ago, we had fires in my area where I was living in Anaheim Hills. And when I left my house with my 2 little dogs and a small suitcase, there were fires on all 4 sides of me with them.
Mm,
And I remember having a similar conversation with myself that everything that's really important to me, I have with me right now. I'm safe in the car. The street that I'm on right now is safe. And I was, like you, fortunate that I was able to go back to my home. But the awareness that life can change at any moment is very real to me for many reasons. But your example of staying in the moment, keeping yourself in the moment, instead of imagining what could happen, which is, like you said, it's a story that you just make up because the future isn't real yet. It's such a great example. If a viewer of this interview would like to contact you, how can they do that?
My website, my personal website is HelloShauna.com.
Okay.
And my book, You Are the Boss of You, that is now available on Amazon, has a workbook that I created for it that can be also accessed on my website, HelloShauna.com. And that workbook is full of so many actionable exercises that relate to all of the things that we've been talking about and so much more. I wrote exercises to correspond with each chapter of my book. And the book is divided into 10 categories that are also relevant and useful, from creating boundaries to building your future and everything in between, advocating for yourself, creating a rhythm, feeling all of your feelings. So it's really comprehensive. And please feel free to contact me. There's a contact page at HelloShauna.com as well. I'm also now newly on Instagram. I've never been on social media until very recently, so I'm still sort of getting my feet wet. But my Instagram handle is at Shauna Brittenham Writer. And I have recently also discovered that people can communicate personally through social media. So you can just DM me, and I do check everything myself. So for my company, I have a team of people, and we kind of take turns using social media. But for my personal account, I am actively the only person checking those DMs, and I'm happy to receive questions or hear stories.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for all you have learned and are now sharing with all of us. And I so appreciate the time you've spent with me today, Shauna.
Thank you, Sam. You're so lovely and gracious to have shared this time with me. And I wish you a beautiful rest of your day.
And I wish you the best as you search for a place that has clean air for you and your children.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, remembering home is internal always. We still are in search of clean air. Take
Okay.
care, Nancy. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Here as well. Thank you, Shauna.
Bye bye.